Welcome back to Fully Involved, the official podcast of Umatilla County Fire District Number 1. We're here today to take you behind the scenes about what we do, how we do it, and the people that make it all happen. Today, we're excited to have Scott Goff, our fire marshal, on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about fire prevention. I'm excited not to be the only Scott on the podcast today. Want to welcome Scott Goff, our fire marshal. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me, Chief.
Yeah, we're going to get into some, I think, pretty good topics today within the Fire Prevention Division. And I guess we could start that off with, can you tell us a little bit about the Fire Prevention Division?
The Fire Prevention Division is made up of 4 individuals. We have myself as a full-time fire marshal, and we have a deputy fire marshal position that is a new position to the fire district in 2024. We also have a part-time fire inspector and safety educator that work less than 10 hours a week typically. The Fire Prevention Division has many different facets, beginning with fire code enforcement. So we inspect facilities throughout the district, including businesses, schools, licensed facilities, processing plants, and our inspections are categorized in a couple of different ways, from inspections, follow-up inspections, complaints, and fire protection systems. We also look at water supplies or any other consultations that we may have to do relating to the fire code throughout the year.
So, Scott, are all inspections created equal? Because we have hospital, we have big industrial plants to a small mom and pop business.
So they all follow the same code, but the application of the code can be different based on the type of occupancy, the type of building, or whatever we may encounter, the type of processing that they may do in a processing plant or
right. Good. It's amazing the diversity that we have here in the district.
Yes.
To data centers, to food processing plants, to the donut shop, to a new Chipotle. The gamut is, to me, seems amazing for rural Eastern Oregon at times.
And it with that gamut, it definitely keeps us busy.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, on top of conducting inspections on a regular basis, answering questions, and taking the time to actually research some stuff in the code, looking at some of the new technologies that are evolving with lithium-ion batteries or those types of things, new construction materials that are coming out. It definitely keeps us busy and keeps us on our toes.
Have we seen a lot of those fires from lithium-ion batteries? I know that's a subject that is coming up now more regularly.
We've had a few fires within the fire district that we've attributed to lithium-ion batteries. Most of those have been relatively small. We may have one commercial building that was attributed to lithium-ion batteries or the failure of lithium-ion batteries, but it's definitely something that we're seeing fairly regularly, but fortunately not an everyday occurrence.
So you mentioned the prevention division consists of you and the deputy fire marshal. And we have a couple folks that kind of are part-time, almost volunteer to us, but part-time. And where do you see the division going based on our needs, our future, our growth?
Well, as you stated, as we continue to grow with new construction from residential all the way up to commercial facilities, data center buildings, as our call volume continues to increase, that also puts a demand on the fire prevention division to step up and we're involved with everything from the plan reviews at the very, very beginning of a project throughout occupancy of the building for the life of the building. Our 2 part-time people are primarily volunteers from the community, And as we know, with volunteering and in the community, that just continues to be challenging, creates a challenge for those people because the demand for the service continues to increase.
So you mentioned those part-time positions. One of them is basically our public educator, Gretchen Erickson.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us knew her from her time as a school resource officer, and
Yep.
we retrained her to be our fire public educator. And tell me how that position is today and how it should evolve and what that really means.
So our public safety educator, she's primarily in the grade schools, and she goes in and does a lot of work with the students in the lower grades at the grade schools. Some of the topics that she's presented on, stop, drop, and roll. Big one that she spent a lot of time on was knowing your location, teaching kids how to not only know their address, but to figure out kind of where they're at based on street signs, landmarks, those types of things. She's talked about water safety, animal safety, seatbelt use, and kind of one of the unique things that Gretchen does for us is she typically ties those lessons into some kind of an art project. So at the end of the lesson, there's an art project for the kids to take home to mom and dad, which I think probably increases the value in that education and reinforces that because mom and dad will take a little more time to look at the artwork from their kids than just some of the typical prevention information pamphlets that we have out there. Another thing that she's really been doing this year is writing a lot of songs to teach the kids to go along with the safety messages that she's putting out there.
I know we've talked about that is definitely one area we'd love to grow. Do you see that in the next, could we use a full-time right now, or is it within the next 2 years?
I think.
Where are we sitting with that? Because that seems like something is hugely important on public safety and education in our communities, schools.
So that's the next position that I think we need to evolve into is, kind of that public education person to be able to continue that and to pick up and assist Gretchen for as long as she's willing to kind of hang in there with us and do the work that she's been doing for us. So I think we're at the point that we need to look at that additional position specifically in the near future.
So we talked a little bit about big buildings, small buildings, and everything in between. I know planned review is a big deal for you too, on when people want to build new buildings and stuff. Can you talk about what that is and what that means?
So the plan review process is kind of the fire district's first look at new development that's going on within the fire district. It starts at the plotting level for residential subdivisions where we look at access and water supply issues. It goes into larger developments where then we start looking at building construction and the size of the building and the required fire protection systems that need to be in there. We start looking at occupant loads and what kind of protection features that we need there. In areas that are located outside of the city where we don't have a developed water system, we also look at on-site water supply storage so that we've got some water out there in the event that we do have a fire that we can access to utilize during our fire suppression operations for the fire district.
And we have some of those sites, don't we, outside the city where you don't have access to the municipal water supply? We have a few of those. Right?
Yes. So the Lamb Weston potato processing plant, some of the data centers that are located outside the city, the new car lots that have been constructed on the north end of the district. Those have all required some form of on-site water supply or storage tank to be placed there so that we have a water supply that's readily accessible when we get there. And in some of those instances too, those buildings are constructed with a fire protection sprinkler system, and so we also have to make sure that there's water supply and pumping capability on site to be able to support those systems to hopefully keep the fire small enough or controlled enough that we don't need any extra water. But it's important for us to look at that and to catch that in the plan review process so that it can be incorporated into the construction of the facility.
So on the buildings, sometimes we know that they're built for one purpose and then they get remodeled for another. How does that play into it?
So when we have a change of use or change of occupancy in a building, that requires another plan review process to go through to make sure that the modifications or the use of the building matches the physical building itself. Some examples where there have been changes in occupancy or changes in use. The Ghost Ship fire in Oakland, California from December of 2016 was a warehouse building. And this building ended up being utilized for some apartments and some show space for artists, and also had a second floor that was utilized for some concerts or shows or entertainment. And unfortunately, there was no change of use, there was no change of occupancy, so there was no plan review as a part of that. And ultimately, 36 people ended up dying in a fire that occurred in that building. And I've seen examples of that around Eastern Oregon as well. I've had commercial buildings that have been used for multifamily housing, where we don't have required egress from bedrooms, we don't have required fire protection systems or whatever. I had a former grocery store that was being renovated into a nightclub, and the significant issue there is there's quite a bit of difference in the exiting required from a grocery store and a nightclub. So, that can create some significant issues there as well. And I've had business space that was attempted to be renovated into some concert venue space. So we have these issues around here, and hopefully we catch them at the time that they're being renovated and not catch them after they've been put into a new use without any of the protective measures being put in place.
All comes back to the safety of our community members, really.
Yes.
That's what we're here for. So.
Yes. And with the fire prevention division, we have kind of three things that I like to look at, or three goals. One is to keep the business open in our district. For sure. Two is to maintain a safe place for their employees to work. And three is to give the public a safe space to go and support our local businesses.
So talking about fire codes and occupancies, so we do different inspections, fire and life safety inspections. So if you're a small business in the district, who can they expect to maybe see and how regularly and stuff like that?
So smaller businesses, fortunately, don't create, or we don't have as big of a fire problem in the smaller businesses. But you could see either myself, our Deputy Fire Marshal, Kelly Shelton, or possibly our part-time inspector, depending on the level of inspection that needs to be done. As the size of the business or the size of the building increases, so does the complexity. And so depending on what level of inspection we're doing, it could be one or a combination of the three of us that would show up to conduct that.
So we have a great partnership with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's office. Can you explain, do they get involved at all with this level here with big ones like hospitals or anything, or what's our relationship with the State Fire Marshal?
So, for the most part, we kind of stand on our own and run our own inspection program. There are some things that the State Fire Marshal's office has jurisdiction over. One of those is above ground fuel storage tanks. So the new gas station that goes in with above ground fuel storage, we'll be doing a portion of the inspection, but the state will be involved with that. The hospital and the nursing homes, there's a little bit of both that will be in there. The hospitals and nursing homes also work under Medicare, Medicaid. And so there's separate inspections that deal with the Medicare, Medicaid aspect versus the Oregon Fire Code aspect. So there are times that the State Fire Marshal's office will come in and conduct inspections, but for the most part, our inspection program is a standalone.
Great. I know that they're good partners with us. Obviously, in the district, we host a hazmat team. It's one of the regional teams for the state. They're a partner there, and it's always probably a great resource for us to have those folks there when we need them, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's another great resource for us if we do get one of those head-scratching questions or get stuck on some research. They're also a good source to have to kind of help us or guide us a little bit to get past that.
And I know that with Kelly's position, that started out as a capacity grant from the Fire Marshal's office.
Yes.
And that helps us to jump into that spot, and our increase, in revenues over time, we can absorb that and pay for it. What a great opportunity for us to have with them. So
yeah,
it's a great opportunity.
And they're definitely a great partner to have for the code enforcement and the investigation piece. So
you mentioned investigations. Let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit. As you're, fire investigations is a big thing that we do to, figure out what the fire cause and origin was. Can you talk a little bit about that processes you use and maybe hit on some of the big fires we have? We have lots of little ones, but sometimes we get awful big ones here too.
Yeah. So the prevention division usually gets involved in the investigation if our on-duty crews are not able to determine a cause. And then we also get involved with the high profile, high dollar loss incidents or incidents where we have injuries or fatalities. Then we're brought in to conduct that as well. Fire investigations can be very complex, and an investigator has to have some knowledge in a lot of different areas, including like physical and biological science, fire behavior, legal aspects, human behavior, building construction materials, electrical systems, heating and ventilation systems, fire protection and security systems. We also have to have knowledge of the fire suppression operations. So we need to have an understanding of what our guys that are coming out on the big red trucks, what they do or how they're operating, or some of the challenges that they encountered during this, so that we can take that into consideration as well. Then when we get into things like wildland fires, now we're looking at topography and weather and those kinds of things that also influence how a fire burns and where it's going to burn. Some of our fire investigations we do independently, but we also do a lot of joint investigations. We talked about the State Fire Marshal's office. This is another area where we can partner with the State Fire Marshal's office and bring in additional resources or additional personnel to work on a fire investigation. We also work with the Bureau of Land Management because we have lots of their land within our fire district. We work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, local law enforcement, private investigators, insurance adjusters, insurance investigators. And so there's a lot of aspects that we have to take into consideration when we're doing a fire investigation.
So I know that we've had some pretty big instances here, like the Shears Food that made potato chips. Can you talk about that one? Because that took you a while to get all the investigations done, and it was our biggest fire, at least in my career here, too. So,
So the Shears fire, that was in 2022. The fire damaged area of the building was approximately 172,000 square feet. We eventually found the cause to be accidental from the installation of a temporary boiler unit. Some of the initial reports were that the boiler exploded, but during the course of the investigation, we were able to determine that that wasn't the case. The boiler did not explode. We had some failure of some process piping, and that's what led to liquid thermal fluid being expelled from the system and becoming ignited at that time. Myself, I spent over 2 months worth of my time just working on that one fire investigation. And this was one where I talked earlier about having to work with private investigators and insurance companies, and that we did 2 joint examinations on that fire because it was such a great loss, and there were a lot of entities that had an interest in the outcome of this investigation. Yeah. So the first joint exam that we did, we had 38 people there examining the fire scene. After that, I did a little more work with some contractors to clear some more of the fire debris away. And the second joint examination that we did for that fire, we had over 50 people there.
I don't think we think about how long it takes to do some of that stuff. I know operationally, we get there that afternoon and we fight fire through the night, and we're there the next day. And, even if we were there at some level for a couple, 2-3 days, maybe operationally, but you were there for weeks and months doing follow-up inspections.
And 6 weeks after the initial fire, we still actually had fire burning in a portion of one of the warehouse areas. And we talk about, this was one of the high-profile, high-dollar loss fires that the Prevention Division was involved with. And just this last year, the National Fire Protection Association put out their list of the top dollar losses for a single fire incident. And in 2022, the Shears fire was number 3 in the nation. The only 2 fires that were more costly than the Shears fire were 2 wildland fires out of the state of California. So very significant fire, very time consuming, working with a lot of individuals over, months, and then compiling the report at the end of that to be able to release out to those interested parties.
So you mentioned wildland fires like that here. We get quite a bit of those here too. And while we don't have a lot of them that get away from us, or we keep them pretty small because of several factors, but we've had some decent ones. Can you talk about maybe the Cold Springs fire was our most recent that got fairly big and hard to handle? So
the Cold Springs fire this year, it was approximately 6,000 acres. We had multiple fires that were ignited along the railroad right-of-way, along a grade that goes from the Columbia River up to the top of the gorge to come into the Hinkle rail yard. This has been an area where we've had fires before. The challenges there are there's no access down into a large portion of this area. There's not even a maintenance of way access road through this. So just to kind of give an idea of how difficult it is to get fire apparatus and personnel into that area. We had one residential structure, an outbuilding, and several vehicles that were damaged from this fire, along with some other property damage that occurred to fences and other things tied to that. We spent a total of 3 days doing the fire scene examination, and this was one where we were assisted by the State Fire Marshal's office. So we had 4 individuals, as well as Kelly and myself, that were involved in that investigation over the course of the 3 days that we were on the scene. And then, of course, compiling our reports afterwards and looking at things like cost recovery for the fire district, since the railroad is considered a transportation route. We're able to go after suppression costs because the railroad right-of-way is non-taxable property. And so along with that report, that's another use for our reports, as it shores up when the fire district does go after some cost recovery for some of these larger incidents.
Would you say you do more investigations for wildland fires or like structure fires in, say, a year's time? And it could maybe change.
It's pretty even across the board. We're getting into November, so the wildland fire piece is kind of going away, and we're starting into the structure fire season, where we see heating appliances and heat lamps for animals and overloaded extension cords and things like that that create that. So it shifts throughout the year. Through the fall and winter, we have typically more of the structure type fires. And then as we get into the spring, and we're starting to see wildland fires popping up as soon as April. Yeah. Because of the drier climate that we have in this area. So it's kind of an even split over the course of the year between wildland and structure type fires.
So as we roll into the holiday season, Scott, can you talk a little bit? Let's start maybe with heat lamp use. Can you talk a little bit about that for safety?
So heat lamps, we usually see a couple fires a year that are caused by heat lamps, where people are using those to either keep animals warm or to try and thaw out frozen water lines. The big thing there is the installation of that heat lamp, installing it to in a position that it's not going to be knocked over, or the animals that are being warmed can come into contact with that, because that's what we usually see. And then the bedding material that we use with the animals, blankets, wood chips, whatever the case may be, then when that hot bulb comes into contact with that's where we see a lot of fire ignitions. And if we have to use a heat lamp for something like that, we also want to encourage minimizing the use of extension cords. That way we can plug that heat lamp. If we can plug that heat lamp directly into an electrical outlet, that's just one less failure point that we could see in the course of using a heat lamp for thawing pipes or keeping animals warm.
If there was one tidbit to tell our public about heat lamp safety, what would be that one piece?
Put it on a solid mount so that it can't get knocked over or become dislodged. Good one.
So you mentioned right there extension cord use, and we know it's, with Christmas, exterior lighting, interior lighting, whether it's a toy train running around the Christmas tree, extension cord use goes up a lot during the Christmas holiday season.
Yes, it does. If we're going to use extension cords, we need to keep in mind that they're designed for temporary use, which this time of year we see a lot of that. But extension cords can be easily overloaded as well if we start using portable space heaters, if we're putting together too many strings of lights or whatever the case may be. Some of the other things that we see is extension cords going to RVs. You've got the family coming in for the holidays, and you're putting them up in the RV for the week or the weekend, and you run an extension cord out there, and then you start running a portable electric space heater. That can provide some opportunity for failure at different points along there. My recommendation would be, if you're going to put them up in the RV with your extension cord, use the furnace that's in your RV or your motorhome or whatever. Those are more so designed off of the 12-volt system. They use typically propane as the heating fuel, and they draw a lot less power than your little ceramic or portable electric space heater. So that would be my recommendation there. And again, with electrical cords, extension cords, you want to make sure that they're in good shape. They're not frayed, damaged, wires exposed. And we want to just keep in mind that every connection point on that extension cord is another potential failure point with resistance heating, especially if we're looking at something like running a heater or a heat lamp and overloading that extension cord.
Right. Good. Yeah, that's for sure. So we talked about overheating. Can you touch on real Christmas trees? Because I know some people still want the real Christmas tree. Some people have artificial trees, but we know if those real Christmas trees, they'll dry out if they're not taken care of and watered, etc.
Correct. So real trees don't really present a significant issue as long as they're maintained. We're checking the water once or twice a day if we need to, keeping that water reservoir full. And we're checking the tree to make sure that it's not drying out by simply just grabbing one of the branches, and if the needles fall off in your hand, then that's an indication that it's time for that tree to be removed from your house. Artificial trees typically come pre-lit, and so the big thing there is to make sure that the tree or the light strings have a tag from Under Armour Laboratories or UL to show that it's been tested and accepted. Our fire district experienced our first Christmas tree fire in April of this year, when we had a tree that had been removed from an apartment, but it wasn't properly disposed of. It was left against the outside of the apartment underneath an upstairs balcony. And we experienced a fire that started on that upstairs balcony and dripped some plastic and hot material down onto that Christmas tree and ignited that Christmas tree. So keep an eye on the Christmas tree, make sure that it's watered, remove it if the needles start coming off in your hands when you squeeze the branch, and properly dispose of that tree. So I know at Christmas time, and I know it's a rule for candle safety throughout the year, but can you touch on those points for candle safety? Obviously, when you have an open flame, that's dangerous, right? Open flames can be dangerous if they're left unattended. So that's the first thing with candles during the holiday season, is to make sure that you're there in attendance. And if you're going to leave, that you blow the candle out. I've experienced several fires over my career where candles have been left unattended, either intentionally or unintentionally, because we do see candle use as a big part of a lot of religious ceremonies and those types of things. And either or, we've seen fires from that candle use, especially when they're left unattended. So big thing, don't leave it unattended.
Yep, for sure. I know I've seen it in my career too. Definitely have candles start fires at times. So if anybody out there, make sure don't leave them unattended. So anything else? I know that there's maybe some cooking safety tips. People cooking the turkey or the turkey outside in the garbage can and the big ham, and any to kind of wrap up some holiday safety stuff. Any cooking tips on safety?
So the first thing is don't get distracted while you're cooking. This could be getting a phone call. It could be friends or family showing up at your house. If you've got to leave the kitchen, try to set a timer to remind you that you need to go back to the kitchen, so that you're not leaving that unattended. We have, even outside of the holidays, we tend to have 6 to 12 responses for unattended to cooking throughout the year here in the fire district. Another issue that we see, especially this time of year, is people like to deep fry their turkeys. The big thing there is to make sure that it's completely thawed. Just like a grease fire in a pan on the stove, and we tell people not to put water on it. If that turkey is still frozen, what is that? You got frozen moisture in there. And so that reacts with the cooking oil, with the heat. That water vaporizes, you get that expansion. And then the grease from the turkey fryer tends to boil over, which then we've got open flame under the kettle. So, so the big thing there is make sure that turkey's thawed. A big reason for that oil coming over too is a person's reaction to that boiling over, and then they drop the turkey. So now it goes completely in, and you get even more oil splashed out of the container. So that's the big thing with cooking. Don't get distracted. Make sure that if you're going to deep fry, that it's completely thawed out.
So if folks need to get a little more information on kind of what we've talked about, or these holiday safety messages, where can they find some of that?
So they can certainly go to our website at ucfd1oregon.gov. There's also the State Fire Marshal's Office website, the National Fire Protection Association website, and several other fire safety resources that are out there that people can go to get information on holiday safety.
And I believe we will be rolling stuff out probably weekly through our website, through our Facebook page and Instagram stuff, on stuff like candle safety or stanchion cord. We'll have some of that, I assume, rolling out.
We'll be rolling out some public safety messaging throughout the holidays. Yes. Nice.
Because in the end, we want people to have a nice, happy, safe holiday.
Yes.
We about got things wrapped up here. I just want to tell everybody out there, have a happy Thanksgiving, Scott, you and your family too.
Happy holidays.
And that's kind of our episode. And for all those who are able to join us today, if you have topics you'd like to hear us talk about, please send us a message. And other than that, we're thank you for joining us. Happy holidays. And that's Fully Involved. Thanks for listening to Fully Involved. And until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and stay involved.